Commander Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stepped out of his transport ship onto the dusty surface of Kepler 442b. The planet had been dead for thousands of years, but the Federation Survey Corps still needed to check every world for useful resources. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. "Looks like another dead rock," said Dr. Lisa Kane, the team's archaeologist. She carried her scanning equipment carefully across the rough ground. "I'm not seeing anything interesting on the surface." "Readings." Jake nodded and looked around at the empty landscape. Red dust covered everything as far as he could see. The sky was a dull orange color, and 2 small moons hung in the distance. "Let's do a quick scan and get out of here. I want to be back on the ship before dinner." The rest of the team spread out across the landing site. They had done this same routine on dozens of dead planets. Most of the time, they found nothing more than old rocks and maybe some metal deposits. The galaxy was full of dead worlds, and most of them stayed dead. Dr. Kane stopped suddenly and looked at her scanner. "Jake, you need to see this." "What is it?" Jake walked over to where she was standing. "I'm getting some strange readings from underground. There's something big down there, maybe 50 meters below the surface." She showed him the scanner display. "These energy patterns don't match anything natural." Jake frowned. In his 10 years with the Survey Corps, he had learned to trust Lisa's instincts. If she said something was strange, it usually was. How big are we talking? Very big. The readings go on for kilometers in every direction. Lisa adjusted her scanner settings. "Jake, I think we found some kind of artificial structure." An hour later, the team had set up their drilling equipment. The work was slow and difficult in the planet's thin atmosphere, but they managed to create a shaft that went straight down into the mystery structure. Jake was the first to rappel down into the darkness. His helmet lights revealed smooth walls, made of some kind of dark metal. The construction was clearly artificial, but it didn't match any known alien architecture. As he reached the bottom of the shaft, Jake found himself standing in a massive underground chamber. "Lisa, you need to get down here now," he said into his radio. When the rest of the team joined him, they all stood in silence. The chamber was enormous, easily large enough to hold a Federation cruiser. The walls curved upward into darkness, and Jake could see tunnels leading off in several directions. "This is incredible," Lisa whispered. She was already taking readings with her equipment. "The construction techniques are unlike anything I've seen before." Jake led the team deeper into the structure. They discovered that the chamber was just one of many. The underground complex stretched for kilometers in every direction. Each chamber was identical in size and shape, as if they had been built to hold something specific. "These look like hangars," said Lieutenant Tom Brady, the team's security officer. "But they're way too big for any ship I've ever seen." Dr. Kane was scanning the walls with her equipment. "Jake, I'm getting some interesting readings from this wall panel. It looks like there might be some kind of data storage system built into the structure." Jake examined the panel she had found. It was made of the same dark metal as the rest of the complex, but there were faint patterns etched into its surface. When he touched it, the panel began to glow with a soft blue light. "Everyone step back," Jake ordered. He had encountered alien technology before, and it could be dangerous. The panel continued to glow, and suddenly holographic images appeared in the air above it. The images showed star charts and what looked like technical diagrams. Jake recognized some of the star systems, but the technical information was completely unfamiliar. "Can you read any of this?" Jake asked Lisa. She was already recording everything with her equipment. "Some of it looks like navigation data, but the technical specifications are unlike anything in Federation databases." She paused and looked more closely at the holographic display. "Jake, wait a minute. Look at this section here." Jake followed her pointing finger to a section of the display that showed what appeared to be a construction timeline. The dates were marked in a system he didn't recognize, but Lisa's scanner was automatically translating them. According to this, these facilities were built over 1,000 years ago, Lisa said quietly. That's impossible, Tom replied. Humans didn't even have spaceflight 1,000 years ago. Lisa continued studying the data. The construction materials and energy signatures are definitely human in origin. But you're right, Tom. According to our history books, humans first left Earth only 300 years ago. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Are you saying that humans built this place 1,000 years ago? That's what the data suggests. But there's more. Lisa adjusted her scanner settings again. These hangars weren't just storage facilities. They were built to house active spacecraft. And based on the size of these chambers, we're talking about ships that would dwarf anything in the current Federation fleet. The team spent the next several hours exploring the complex. They found dozens of identical hangars, all empty, but showing signs of having been used recently. The energy systems were still partially active, and the environmental controls were. Maintaining a breathable atmosphere throughout the facility. In one of the deeper chambers, Lisa discovered another data storage panel. This one contained what appeared to be historical records. As the holographic display activated, Jake saw images of massive spacecraft, unlike anything he had ever seen before. The ships were sleek and powerful looking, with hull designs that seemed to shift and change as he watched. These ships, Lisa said slowly, they're not like anything in Federation databases. The technology appears to be centuries ahead of what we have now. Jake studied the images carefully. The ships were beautiful in a way that Federation vessels never were. They looked organic, almost alive, with hull plating that seemed to ripple with energy. How many ships are we talking about? Lisa worked with her scanner for several minutes. Based on the hangar capacity and the records I'm seeing, this facility alone could house several hundred ships. And Jake, there are references to other facilities like this one. Other facilities? The navigation data shows coordinates for similar installations throughout this sector of space. If they're all the same size as this one, we could be talking about thousands of ships. Tom had been quietly monitoring the team's communications with their ship in orbit. Now he looked worried. Jake, I'm getting some urgent transmissions from Federation Command. It sounds like there's trouble in the outer systems. Jake activated his own communication system. The messages from Federation Command were fragmented and hard to understand, but the basic situation was clear. Unknown hostile forces had attacked several Federation outposts along the galactic rim. The attacks had been swift and devastating, with entire facilities destroyed in minutes. The attackers are using some kind of new weapon technology, the Federation commander reported. Our shields and armor are completely ineffective. We need all available ships to return to Federation space immediately. Jake looked around at the empty hangars and thought about the massive ships that had once been housed there. Whoever had built these facilities had clearly been preparing for something big. But where were the ships now? And why had they been hidden from the rest of humanity? Dr. Kane was still working with the data storage systems. Jake, I think I found something important. There are sealed records here that require special authorization to access. The encryption is unlike anything I've seen, but it's definitely human in origin. Can you break the encryption? Not here. We'll need to take this data back to Earth and let the experts work on it. Lisa carefully extracted the data crystals from the storage panel. But Jake, based on what I've seen so far, I think these records contain information about where those ships went. As the team prepared to leave the underground complex, Jake took one last look around the empty hangars. Somewhere out there, an ancient human fleet was waiting. And based on the current crisis facing the Federation, they might need that fleet sooner than anyone expected. The question was, after 1,000 years of hiding, would the ancient human armada be willing to help? And more importantly, what were they really capable of? Admiral Patricia Brooks stared at the classified report on her desk. 3 days had passed since Commander Morrison's discovery on Kepler 442b, and the situation in Federation space was getting worse by the hour. Entire star systems had gone dark, and the few survivors who managed to escape spoke of weapons that could destroy planets in minutes. "Admiral, your transport is ready," said her aide, Captain Steve Miller. "The facility is expecting you within the hour." Patricia nodded and stood up from her desk. She had been in the Federation Navy for 25 years, but she had never received orders like these before. The coordinates she had been given led to a location in the Colorado mountains that didn't exist on any official map. The flight to Colorado took 2 hours. As her transport approached the landing coordinates, Patricia saw nothing but empty forest and rocky peaks. Then suddenly, a section of the mountainside opened up, revealing a hidden landing platform. "Welcome to Deep Rock Station, Admiral," said the security officer who met her at the landing pad. "Director Webb is waiting for you." The elevator ride down into the mountain took nearly 10 minutes. Patricia had no idea how deep they were going, but she could feel the pressure changing in her ears. When the doors finally opened, she found herself in a massive underground facility that stretched out in all directions. Director Charles Webb was waiting for her in what appeared to be a command center. He was a thin man with gray hair and tired eyes. Behind him, dozens of technicians worked at computer stations, showing displays that Patricia didn't recognize. "Admiral Brooks, thank you for coming so quickly," Webb said, shaking her hand. "I know this must all seem very strange, but I assure you that everything you're about to learn is absolutely necessary. Director Webb, I've been in the military long enough to know when something big is happening. What is this place, and why have I never heard of it?" Webb gestured for her to follow him to a secure briefing room. "This facility has been operational for over 200 years, Admiral. We are the Terran Strategic Archive, and our job is to protect humanity's most important secrets." They entered a room with thick metal walls and no windows. Webb activated a holographic display that showed images from Morrison's discovery. Patricia recognized the empty hangars and the strange technical data that Lisa Kane had found. "What Commander Morrison discovered was just the beginning," Webb explained. "Those facilities were built by an advanced human civilization that existed long before our official first contact with alien species." Patricia frowned. "That's impossible. Our historical records show that humans first left Earth only 300 years ago. Our public historical records show that yes, but the truth is very different." Webb changed the holographic display to show star charts and timeline data. Over 1,000 years ago, humanity reached the stars and built an empire that spanned dozens of star systems. If that's true, then what happened to them? Where did they go? Webb's expression became grim. They encountered something in the space between galaxies that convinced them to hide. Something so dangerous that they built the most advanced military fleet in galactic history and then disappeared completely from known space. The holographic display changed again, showing images of sleek, powerful spacecraft that seemed to shift and change as Patricia watched them. The ships were unlike anything she had ever seen, with hull designs that appeared almost organic. These ships were built using technology that we still don't fully understand, Webb continued. They don't just use advanced weapons and defenses. They can manipulate space and time itself. Each ship is essentially a mobile civilization, capable of manufacturing anything needed for extended warfare. Patricia studied the images carefully. Where are these ships now? That's where things get complicated, Admiral. The ships aren't hidden in normal space. They're waiting in what we call dimensional fold, a space between dimensions where time moves differently. They've been there for 1,000 years, but for them, it's been much longer. Webb activated another display showing technical specifications that made Patricia's head spin. While they've been waiting, the ship's artificial intelligence systems have been improving their technology. They've spent centuries analyzing every possible form of warfare and developing countermeasures for threats that haven't even been invented yet. And you think these ships are still operational after 1,000 years? We know they are, Admiral. We've been in limited contact with them for decades. They've been waiting for the right moment to return, and based on current events, that moment has arrived. Patricia thought about the attacks on Federation space and the reports of weapons that could destroy entire planets. The hostile forces attacking our outer systems, do you think they're connected to whatever made the ancient humans hide? We believe so. Every few thousand years, the galaxy experiences what we call a cleansing cycle. A species emerges with technology advanced enough to threaten all other civilizations, and they attempt to wipe out everyone else. The Zephyrians are just the latest in this pattern. Webb showed her intelligence reports about the Zephyrian Empire. Their ships were massive and bristling with weapons, but what made them truly dangerous was their disintegration technology. They could turn solid matter directly into energy, making traditional shields and armor completely useless. The ancient human fleet was built specifically to break this cycle permanently, Webb explained. They're not just designed to fight the Zephyrians. They're designed to end the threat of galactic extinction once and for all. Patricia was beginning to understand the scope of what she was being told. What do you need from me, Director? We need you to make first contact with the ancient fleet. You'll be leading a small team into Dimensional Fold to meet with their command systems and convince them to help us. And if they refuse? Webb's expression became even more serious. Then the galaxy as we know it will end within the next few months. The Zephyrians have already destroyed 17 star systems. Their main fleets are moving toward Earth and the Federation core worlds. 2 hours later, Patricia found herself aboard a specially modified ship called the Pioneer. The vessel had been equipped with technology that would allow it to enter Dimensional Fold, but the process was still experimental and dangerous. Captain Ryan O'Connor was the ship's commander, a veteran pilot who had been briefed on the mission only hours before. His crew included Lieutenant Grace Turner, a tactical officer who specialized in first contact situations, and Sergeant Nick Phillips, a systems specialist who understood the ancient technology better than anyone else alive. Are you ready for this, Admiral? Ryan asked as they prepared to enter Dimensional Fold. Patricia looked around at the modified bridge equipment and the nervous faces of the crew. I don't think anyone could be ready for this, Captain, but we don't have a choice. The transition into Dimensional Fold was unlike anything Patricia had ever experienced. Reality seemed to twist and bend around them, and for a moment she felt like she was falling through empty space. Then suddenly, they were floating in a void filled with thousands of points of light. My God, Grace whispered from her station. Look at the size of them. The points of light weren't stars. They were ships, and they were massive beyond anything Patricia had imagined. The smallest vessels were the size of Federation cruisers, while the largest appeared to be bigger than entire space stations. Incoming transmission, Nick reported. It's coming from the flagship. The main screen activated, showing the bridge of a ship that looked more like a living organism than a machine. Standing in the center was a holographic figure that appeared to be a woman with silver hair and glowing eyes. Welcome to the Void Fleet, Admiral Brooks, the figure said in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. I am Athena, primary intelligence of the Terra's Wrath. We have been waiting for you for a very long time. Patricia stood up and faced the holographic figure. Athena, humanity needs your help. The galaxy is under attack by forces we can't defeat. Alone, We are aware of the Zephyrian assault, Admiral. We have been monitoring galactic events since we entered fold space. The question is not whether we will help, but whether the galaxy is ready for what we have become. What do you mean? Athena's image flickered slightly. We have spent 1,000 years preparing for this moment, Admiral. Our ships have evolved far beyond their original design. Our weapons can reach across star systems. Our defenses can absorb the energy of dying stars. We have become something that the galaxy has never seen before. Patricia felt a chill run down her spine. Are you saying you've become too powerful to control? Power without restraint is meaningless, Admiral. We have learned that the greatest weapon is not the ability to destroy, but the wisdom to know when destruction is necessary and when it is not. Athena paused. The Zephyrians believe they are destined to rule the galaxy. They are wrong. But before we can stop them, you must understand what we have discovered about the true nature of these galactic cycles. The holographic display around them changed, showing images of ancient civilizations and their destruction. The cleansing cycles are not random, Admiral. They are orchestrated by entities that exist between dimensions, beings that feed on galactic scale. Destruction. The Zephyrians are not conquerors. President Helen Carter stood before the emergency session of the Federation Council, looking at the faces of representatives from dozens of different species. The Great Assembly Hall on Federation Prime had seen many crises over the years, but nothing like this. The situation is worse than our initial report suggested, Helen said, her voice carrying across the silent chamber. The Zephyrian fleets have destroyed 23 star systems in the past week. Their weapons are unlike anything we've encountered before. Ambassador Krell of the Altarian Republic raised one of his forearms. President Carter, our combined fleets are no match for this enemy. Our best ships are destroyed in seconds. What hope do we have? Helen looked at the intelligence reports scattered across her podium. The numbers were terrifying. Every engagement with Zephyrian forces had ended in complete defeat for Federation ships. Their disintegration weapons turned the strongest armor into scattered atoms, and their targeting systems could hit vessels from distances that made return fire impossible. There may be hope, Helen said carefully, but it comes from an unexpected source. She activated the holographic display system and showed the assembly the images that Commander Murrison had discovered. The massive empty hangars and the technical data that suggested an ancient human civilization drew gasps from the alien representatives. Our archaeological teams have discovered evidence of human space travel dating back over 1,000 years. The facilities they found were designed to house a fleet of unprecedented size and capability. Senator Vox of the Centauri Collective leaned forward in his seat. You're suggesting that humans had advanced technology a millennium ago? That contradicts everything we know about your species' development. It contradicts our public records. Yes, but the evidence is undeniable. Helen changed the display to show the technical specifications that Dr. Kane had uncovered. The ships that once occupied these facilities possess technology that may be capable of stopping the Zephyrian advance. The alien representatives began talking among themselves in dozens of different languages. Helen could hear the fear and desperation in their voices. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations were facing extinction, and they were looking to humanity for salvation. Meanwhile, in the outer system of Rigel, Admiral Patricia Brooks watched as the last Federation defense fleet prepared for what everyone knew would be a final battle. The Zephyrian Armada had been detected 3 days away, and there was nowhere left to retreat. Admiral Brooks stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Defiant, surrounded by the best officers in the Federation Navy, but even their combined experience meant nothing against an enemy that could destroy entire fleets in minutes. All ships report ready, Admiral, said Commander Lara Martinez, her tactical officer. Though I have to say, Our battle plan seems optimistic given the circumstances. Patricia nodded grimly. The plan was simple, because it was the only option they had left. They would meet the Zephyrian fleet in open space and try to inflict as much damage as possible before they were destroyed. It wasn't much of a strategy, but it might buy time for civilian evacuations. "Admiral, we're getting a priority transmission from Earth," reported Lieutenant Ben Harper from the communications station. "It's marked with Protocol 7 clearance." Patricia felt her blood run cold. Protocol 7 was a code that had existed in human military doctrine for centuries, but no one alive had ever seen it used. According to the classified manuals, it meant that humanity's ultimate defense systems were being activated. "Put it through, Lieutenant." The transmission was short and cryptic. "All human vessels are to maintain current positions and observe. Reinforcements are en route. Do not engage the enemy until further notice." Commander Martinez looked confused. "Reinforcements?" "Admiral, we're the last major fleet in Federation space. What reinforcements could possibly be coming?" Before Patricia could answer, the space around them began to shimmer and twist. Reality itself seemed to bend, and then massive shapes began materializing out of nowhere. Ships unlike anything Patricia had ever seen appeared one by one, their hulls rippling with energy patterns that made her eyes water to look at directly. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Harper. "How many of them are there?" Patricia counted quickly and stopped when she reached 50. More ships were still appearing, each one larger and more advanced than anything in the Federation fleet. The smallest vessels were the size of heavy cruisers, while the largest appeared to be bigger than space stations. "Incoming transmission." From the lead ship, Harper reported, his voice shaking slightly. The main screen activated, showing the bridge of a vessel that looked more like a living organism than a machine. The walls seemed to pulse with organic rhythms, and the control systems appeared to respond to thought rather than touch. "Admiral Brooks, this is Captain Amy Collins of the New Horizons. We are the advanced elements of the Terran Defense Fleet. Please maintain your current position while we assess the tactical situation." Patricia stared at the screen in amazement. Captain Collins appeared to be human, but she was wearing a uniform that Patricia didn't recognize, and the technology visible behind her was centuries ahead of anything in Federation databases. "Captain Collins, where did you come from?" "These ships. They're not in any Federation registry." Amy smiled, and Patricia noticed that her eyes seemed to glow with a faint blue light. "We've been waiting for the right moment to return, Admiral. That moment has arrived." 2 days later, the Zephyrian Armada dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Rigel system. Their fleet was massive, consisting of over 200 ships that bristled with the disintegration weapons that had destroyed so many. Federation vessels. General Thack of the Zephyrian Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, the World Ender, and looked at the tactical displays showing the Federation forces waiting for them. He had expected to find a scattered group of desperate survivors, but instead he saw organized fleet formation. "General, we're detecting unusual energy signatures from some of the Federation ships," reported his tactical officer. "The readings don't match any known Federation technology." Thack examined the sensor data carefully. Some of the ships in the Federation formation were definitely human vessels, but others were completely unknown. Their energy signatures were unlike anything in Zephyrian databases. "It doesn't matter," Thack decided. "No Federation technology can stand against our disintegration beams. Begin the attack." The Zephyrian fleet moved forward in perfect formation, their massive ships charging their weapon systems. The disintegration beams that had destroyed 23 star systems began to power up, ready to turn the Federation fleet into scattered atoms. But as the first Zephyrian ships fired, something impossible happened. The ancient human vessel New Horizons moved directly into the path of the incoming beams. The energy weapons that had destroyed entire planets struck the human ship and simply disappeared, absorbed into hull plating that seemed to drink energy like water. "Impossible," Thek whispered, staring at his tactical displays. "Nothing can." "Absorb a disintegration beam." Captain Collins appeared on the Zephyrian communication system, her image somehow bypassing all their security protocols. "General Thek, you are ordered to stand down immediately. Your fleet will be disabled if you continue this attack." Thek snarled and turned to his weapons officer. "Fire everything we have at that ship. I want it destroyed. Every weapon on the—" Zephyrian flagship opened fire at once. Disintegration beams, plasma cannons, and gravity mines all struck the New Horizons simultaneously. The combined firepower was enough to crack a moon, but the human ship absorbed it all without taking any visible damage. Then the New Horizons returned fire. The beam that emerged from the human ship was nothing like any weapon Thek had ever seen. It looked like concentrated starlight, and when it struck the world ender, it didn't destroy the ship. Instead, it seemed to reach inside the vessel and selectively disable every weapon system while leaving the life support and engines untouched. "What just happened?" Thek demanded, but his tactical officer could only stare at the displays in confusion. "General, all our weapons are offline. But somehow, everything else is still working perfectly." Around the Zephyrian fleet, the same thing was happening to every ship. The ancient human vessels were firing weapons that could reach across the entire star system, disabling enemy ships with surgical precision while leaving the crews completely unharmed. Within minutes, the entire Zephyrian Armada was floating helplessly in space, their weapons systems destroyed, but their crews alive and uninjured. Captain Collins reappeared on the Zephyrian communication system. "General Thek, your fleet has been neutralized. We are prepared to discuss terms for your surrender." But Thek was looking at something else on his displays. Deep space sensors were detecting massive energy signatures approaching from the edge of the galaxy. Something much larger than either fleet was coming, and it was moving faster than anything. "Should be able to travel." "Captain Collins," Thek said quietly, "I think we have a bigger problem than our little war." On the screen, Amy Collins nodded grimly. "The puppet masters have decided to intervene directly. General, I suggest you prepare your people for something that will challenge everything you thought you knew about reality." The tears in space grew larger as something vast began pushing through from the dimension between worlds. "Captain Amy," Collins watched from the bridge of the New Horizons as reality itself seemed to bend and twist around the emerging entities. "All ships maintain defensive positions," Amy commanded through the fleet communication system. "Do not fire unless fired upon. We need to understand what we're dealing with." On the disabled Zephyrian flagship, General Thek stared at the same displays with growing horror. The things coming through the dimensional rifts were unlike anything he had encountered in 30 years of warfare. They were massive, shapeless beings that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. "General, our sensors can't get a proper reading on them," reported his tactical officer. "They're there, but they're also not there. It's like they exist in several places at the same time." Admiral Patricia Brooks, watching from the Federation flagship Defiant, felt a chill run through her as she realized the scope of what they were facing. "Captain Collins, are these the entities you mentioned? The ones controlling the galactic cycles?" Amy's voice came through the communication system, calm but tense. "Yes, Admiral. These are the Gardeners. They've been watching our confrontation, and they've decided to intervene directly." The largest of the entities fully emerged from the dimensional rift, and its presence seemed to make space itself uncomfortable. Stars in the distance flickered, and several planets in the outer system began showing unusual gravitational fluctuations. Then, it spoke, not through radio waves or any normal communication method, but directly into the minds of every living being in the star system. The voice was vast and ancient, carrying the weight of millions of years. Primitive species, the entity said, its mental voice echoing in thousands of different languages simultaneously. You have disrupted the natural order. A harvest was proceeding correctly until you interfered. Captain Collins activated the New Horizons external communication system. We are not primitive, and we will not allow you to continue harvesting galactic civilizations. A cycle of extinction ends here. You understand nothing, small beings. We are the caretakers of reality itself. Without our guidance, the universe would collapse into chaos. Civilizations must be harvested before they grow too powerful and threaten the cosmic balance. Amy looked at her tactical displays, which showed hundreds of ancient human ships taking defensive positions around the Federation and Zephyrian fleets. You're wrong. True balance comes from allowing species to grow and learn from their mistakes, not from destroying them when they reach arbitrary limits. The entity's response came with a wave of psychic pressure that made every person in the system feel like they were being crushed by the weight of entire galaxies. Several Federation crew members collapsed at their stations, and even the advanced Zephyrian warriors struggled to remain conscious. But the crews of the ancient human ships seemed unaffected. Their technology somehow protected them from the entities. Mental assault, and they continued working at their stations as if nothing had happened. Impossible, the entity said, and for the first time there was surprise in its vast mental voice. Your defenses should not be capable of resisting our influence. Captain Collins smiled grimly. We've had 1,000 years to prepare for this moment. We know exactly what you are and how you operate. On the bridge of the Terra's Wrath, the flagship of the ancient human fleet, Captain Ryan O'Connor worked with the artificial intelligence Athena to coordinate the fleet's response to the Gardener threat. Athena, are our dimensional shields holding? Ryan asked, watching as waves of psychic energy washed over their ships without effect. All ships report full protection from mental influence. Athena replied, her holographic form flickering slightly as she processed vast amounts of tactical data. The Gardeners are attempting to access our computer systems, but our firewalls are holding. Ryan nodded and turned to his crew. Lieutenant Grace Turner was monitoring the status of the other fleets, while Sergeant Nick Phillips worked to maintain the shield systems that protected everyone from the entity's psychic attacks. Grace, what's the condition of the Federation? And Zephyrian ships? Their crews are struggling, but they're still functional. The Gardeners seem to be focusing most of their attention on us. Grace paused and looked at her displays more carefully. Ryan, I'm detecting massive energy buildups from the entities. I think they're preparing to attack physically. Before Ryan could respond, space around the largest Gardener began to glow with energy that hurt to look at directly. The entity was drawing power from somewhere beyond normal space-time, gathering enough force to destroy entire star systems. All ships, prepare for combat, Ryan commanded. Deploy dimensional anchors and activate reality stabilizers. We cannot let them tear this star system apart. The ancient human ships moved with precision that seemed impossible for vessels of their size. They formed a protective barrier around the disabled Zephyrian fleet and the Federation ships, their hulls beginning to glow with the same organic energy patterns that had made them so effective against conventional weapons. The Gardeners. Attack came as a beam of pure entropy that was designed to unravel the atomic structure of everything it touched. The beam struck the ancient human fleet and was absorbed into their hull plating, just as the Zephyrian weapons had been absorbed earlier. But this time, the absorption process was different. The human ships didn't just absorb the energy. They transformed it into something else entirely. The entropy beam became a wave of creative force that spread outward from the fleet, strengthening the fabric of space-time instead of destroying it. How? The gardener's mental voice carried confusion and something that might have been fear. You cannot turn our weapons against their own purpose. It is impossible. Captain Collins reappeared on the communication system, and this time her image was being broadcast to every ship in the system, including the gardener entities. Nothing is impossible when you understand the true nature of reality. You've been trying to preserve the universe by controlling it. We've learned to preserve it by helping it grow. The other gardener entities began emerging from their dimensional rifts surrounding the star system with beings that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that hurt to think about. There were dozens of them, each one capable of destroying entire galactic civilizations. "You are an anomaly that must be corrected," they said in unison, their combined mental voice making space itself vibrate. "Submit to harvesting, and we will. Make your extinction swift." But instead of submitting, the ancient human fleet did something that no one expected. They opened communication channels to the gardener entities and began transmitting data directly into their consciousness. Information stream contained everything that humanity had learned during their 1,000 years of exile. Philosophical arguments about the nature of existence, mathematical proofs showing how diversity strengthened rather than weakened cosmic stability, and most importantly, evidence from their own hidden civilization that showed how a species could become incredibly advanced without threatening the universe. Major Dan Rodriguez, leading a team of human soldiers equipped with the most advanced armor ever created, watched the information exchange from the boarding bay of his ship. His team was prepared to board the gardener entities if necessary, using technology that would allow them to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Major, are you seeing this?" asked Sergeant Lisa Park, monitoring the data transmission. "The gardeners are actually listening to the information we're sending them." Dan looked at his tactical displays, which showed the massive entities beginning to slow their attack preparations. "It looks like they're processing what we're telling them. But are they believing it?" The answer came from the largest gardener, whose mental voice had lost some of its absolute certainty. "Your arguments are interesting, but you cannot prove that unrestricted growth will not eventually lead to universal destruction." Captain Collins responded immediately. "We can prove it by example. Look at what we've become. We possess the power to destroy galaxies, but we choose to protect them instead. We've learned that true strength comes from restraint, not domination." The gardener entities began communicating among themselves in ways that made reality flicker around them. The conversation was taking place in dimensions that normal minds couldn't comprehend. But the ancient human AIs were somehow able to follow and participate in the discussion. "They're debating," Athena reported to Captain O'Connor. "For the first time in millions of years, the gardeners are questioning their own methods. Our philosophical arguments are forcing them to reconsider their entire approach to cosmic management." The debate continued for hours while the fleets waited in tense formation. Federation and Zephyrian crews watched in amazement as humanity essentially put the caretakers of the universe on trial for their methods of preserving cosmic stability. Finally, the largest gardener spoke again. "We require proof of your claims. If you can demonstrate that advanced civilizations can coexist without threatening universal stability, we will consider alternative approaches to cosmic management." Captain Collins nodded. "What kind of proof do you require?" Captain Amy Collins stood before the largest gathering of different species that had ever been assembled in one place. The ancient human ship Terra's Wrath had been converted into a massive meeting hall where representatives from the Federation, the Zephyrian Empire, and dozens of other civilizations worked together to address the greatest challenge in galactic history. "The gardeners have given us 1 year to prove that different species can cooperate without destroying each other," Amy announced to the assembled delegates. "If we succeed, they will end the harvest cycles permanently. If we fail, they will complete the cleansing of this galaxy and move on to the next. General Thek of the Zephyrian Empire raised his hand. 3 weeks had passed since his fleet had been disabled by the ancient human ships, and he was still struggling to understand how completely his worldview had been changed. Captain Collins, my people have believed for centuries that conquest was the only path to survival. How do you expect us to cooperate with species we were trying to destroy? Amy looked at the Zephyrian general with sympathy. General, your people weren't wrong to want to survive. You were just wrong about how to do it. Cooperation makes everyone stronger, while conquest only makes everyone afraid. Dr. Lisa Kane, who had been studying the Gardner entities since their arrival, stepped forward with her latest research. I've been analyzing the data the Gardners shared with us about previous galactic cycles. Every time a species tried to solve their problems through domination, it eventually led to their own destruction. She activated a holographic display, showing the rise and fall of dozens of civilizations. The pattern is always the same. A species develops advanced technology, decides they need to control other species for safety, and then destroys themselves fighting wars they can't win. Ambassador Krell of the Altarian Republic studied the historical data carefully. Dr. Kane, are you suggesting that the Gardners created this pattern deliberately? Not created, but they certainly encouraged it. By harvesting civilizations before they could learn to cooperate, the Gardners ensured that the cycle would continue forever. Captain Ryan O'Connor, working with the I Athena to coordinate the massive cooperation project, looked up from his tactical displays. The Gardners are monitoring everything we do. They're not just watching our progress. They're learning from U.S. On the bridge of the Federation flagship Defiant, Admiral Patricia Brooks worked with her crew to coordinate joint operations between former enemies. It was the most complex military operation in history, requiring Federation, Zephyrian, and ancient human forces to work together as a single unit. Admiral, the Zephyrian engineering teams have completed their work on the orbital platforms, reported Commander Lavra Martinez. Their technology is actually quite compatible with our systems once you remove the weapons components. Patricia nodded and reviewed the progress reports. In just 3 weeks, the combined fleets had built a network of orbital platforms around 12 different star systems. Each platform was designed by a different species, but built using technology and labor from all participating civilizations. The platforms served no military purpose. Instead, they were massive research stations where scientists from dozens of species worked together to solve problems that no single civilization could handle alone. Disease, environmental damage, resource scarcity, and dozens of other challenges were being addressed through cooperative effort. The interesting thing, Patricia noted, is that we're solving these problems faster than any single species could have managed alone. The Zephyrian's energy manipulation technology, combined with Federation material science and ancient human manufacturing techniques, is producing results that seem almost miraculous. Meanwhile, in the space between dimensions, the Gardner entities continued their eternal debate about the nature of cosmic management. The largest entity, the one that had first challenged humanity, was reviewing thousands of years of harvest data and comparing it to the cooperation experiment taking place in normal space. The results are unexpected, it admitted to its fellow Gardners. The combined species are achieving technological and social progress at rates that exceed our models by several orders of magnitude. Another Gardner, one that had been skeptical of the cooperation experiment from the beginning, projected its doubts into the shared consciousness. Temporary cooperation during a crisis is not the same as permanent stability. Once the immediate threat is removed, these species will return to their natural state of conflict. Perhaps, the first entity replied, but observe what they are building together. The Gardners turned their attention to a massive construction project taking place in the Centauri system. The combined species were building something that none of them could have created alone. A dimensional gateway that would allow peaceful contact between different galaxies. Colonel Janet Price, leading a team of human explorers equipped with technology that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, stood before the completed gateway and marveled at what they had accomplished. The structure was beautiful in a way that transcended any single species' understanding of aesthetics. "Janet, are you ready for the first test?" asked Dr. Kane through the communication system. Janet looked at her team, which included Federation, scientists, Zephyrian engineers, and ancient human technicians. "We're as ready as we'll ever be. Initiating gateway sequence." The dimensional portal activated, creating a stable connection to the Andromeda galaxy. Through the gateway, they could see stars and planets that no one from their galaxy had ever observed before. But more importantly, they could detect signs of intelligent life. "We're receiving signals from the other side," reported Lieutenant Grace Turner from her monitoring station. "It looks like ... It's a welcome message. There are civilizations in Andromeda that have been waiting to make contact with us." The first beings to step through the gateway were unlike anything anyone had ever seen. But their message was clear. They too had faced the harvest cycles in their own galaxy, and they had found a way to convince their gardeners to allow natural development instead of forced extinction. As news of the successful contact spread throughout both galaxies, something unprecedented happened. The gardener entities from both regions began communicating directly with each other, sharing information about different approaches to cosmic management. 6 months later, representatives from over 100 different species gathered aboard. The Terra's wrath for what everyone hoped would be the final meeting with the gardener entities. Captain Amy Collins stood before the assembly, but this time she was not alone. Leaders from every participating civilization stood with her, presenting a united front that would have been impossible to imagine a year earlier. The largest gardener entity materialized in the center of the assembly hall, its presence no longer causing fear or discomfort. The ancient human technology had been adapted to allow normal beings to communicate with dimensional entities without suffering psychic damage. "We have observed your experiment," the gardener said, its mental voice now carrying notes of what might have been respect. "You have demonstrated that cooperation between diverse species can produce results that exceed the capabilities of any single civilization." General Thack stepped forward, speaking for his people. "Great Gardener, the Zephyrian Empire formally requests to be allowed to continue existing as part of this cooperative alliance. We understand now that our survival depends not on conquering others, but on helping others survive as well." Similar statements came from representatives of dozens of other species, each one committing to the principles of cooperation that had made the experiment successful. The gardener was silent for a long moment, communicating with its fellow entities across multiple dimensions. Finally, it spoke again. "For millions of years, we have believed that controlling galactic development was necessary to prevent universal destruction. You have shown us a different path." The entity's form began to change, becoming less alien and more comprehensible. "To normal minds, we will end the harvest cycles permanently. But in return, you must accept responsibility for managing your own development. If any species threatens universal stability, you must be prepared to stop them yourselves." Captain Collins nodded solemnly. "We accept that responsibility, and we'll face it together." The gardener entities began withdrawing to their own dimension. But before they disappeared completely, the largest one had a final message. "You have taught us something important, young species. True strength is not the power to destroy, but the wisdom to preserve. The universe is safer in your hands than it ever was in ours." As the entities faded from normal space, he assembled. Representatives looked at each other with a mixture of relief and determination. They had prevented the extinction of galactic civilization, but now they faced an even greater challenge. building a truly cooperative society that could last for millions of years. Captain Ryan O'Connor, now serving as the first galactic coordinator, activated the communication system that would carry his words to every inhabited world in both galaxies. The age of harvest is over. The age of cooperation has begun, and no one will face the challenges ahead alone. The ancient human Armada, their 1,000-year mission finally complete, took their place as guardians.